Hi, I'm Dr. Donna Lane.
And I'm Dr. David Lane.
We're going to talk about loving your children without condition, our next top 10 most effective parenting strategy. What does it mean to love your child without condition? So, we're going to talk about that today.
When I make the decision to have children, I make a commitment to take care of my children, to love my children, to be there for my children. And part of what that means, at least to us, is that we love that child without condition. Now, people hear that and they say to themselves, well, when they are misbehaving, do I have to be okay with that? When they make really bad decisions that are 180 degrees counter to what we believe and have taught their whole lives, do I have to be okay with that? Nope, that's not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is you love them without any conditions, meaning I don't depend on them to behave well for me to still love them. I don't depend on them to get the best grades at school for me to still love them. I don't depend on them to whatever, fill in the blank for me to love them. I love them regardless. Does not mean I approve of their behaviors from time to time. Does not mean that I accept things that are contrary to the family's values and the family's beliefs. It's not what that means at all. It means that I love them without condition. Part of that also is I meet them where they are. When they are small children, I meet them as small children. Try and understand where they are and what they're dealing with as a small child and not impose my adult values. I learned that a lesson a long, long time ago that I would frequently get frustrated. And when I closely examined what I was being frustrated about, was I was expecting my child to not be a child, but to instead be an adult. Well, depending on the day, I can't even be a good adult. I don't like adulting very much. Adulting turns out to be a whole lot of work, not a whole lot of fun. And I had some really flawed expectations of expecting them to be able to sit still, for instance, for them to be able to be quiet for long periods of time, for instance. And that's just not possible because I can't sit still for long periods of time and I can't be quiet for long periods of time. And so it was unreasonable for me to expect that. So I met them where they were. And with that, I loved them as they were because I understood where they were. Then as they aged and as they moved in developmental stages, I continued to love them exactly because God gave them to me and they are a wonderful gift. And I love them regardless of whether they make great decisions or whether they make poor decisions, whether they get the best grades, et cetera, et cetera. But I always try to go and meet them where they are to understand what they were experiencing, what they were doing, how they were thinking, so that I could work with their behavior. I could help them with behavior. And because my love was always going to be there without fail. I was always going to love them and it was always going to be there for them.
So, one of the things that you need to do is help the child recognize the difference between their behavior and their identity. Um, who they are is created by God. It originates in them. It's a unique, beautiful, wonderful, and valuable treasure. That's their identity. Their behavior, however, doesn't always match their identity. And so to be able to help the child distinguish when you are disciplining them, which just basically means to teach them, when you're disciplining them about a behavior, to make that clear distinction between their behavior and their identity. Okay, I don't like or appreciate this behavior. I still love you. I would rather you not behave in this way. My love for you doesn't change. I don't want you to do these things, act this way, but I still see you for who you are. I still know who God created you to be. Making that distinction for them, because children uh, are not able to make that distinction on their own. You have to teach them to make that distinction. Now, I know plenty of adults who are not able to make that distinction. So it's very important that you, in your own mind, also remember when your child is acting in a way that you're getting angry, you're getting frustrated, you're getting upset. That's normal. We all do that. That you clarify in your mind, I am frustrated with their behavior, with their actions, with their choices right now. I am not angry with their personhood. I'm not mad at them. I'm just upset with that choice. And that one of the ways you can really most effectively do that is use the language of choice. I don't like your choices. I love you. That doesn't change. But your choices can be problematic sometimes, and this is one of those times.
And that wasn't a great decision that you made.
Mhm.
Let's take a look at that decision that you made. And with my support, they understand that I care about them, I love them, and it's not dependent on how well they behave or what they do. The worst person you can imagine. Hitler's mama loved him. Isn't that an odd thing to conceive of? The worst kind of behaviors, the worst kind of ideas in the world. There's still something in there to love potentially. And I don't mean to start an argument, so please don't send a bunch of hate mail. But I want you to think through that a child misbehaving at school is not a child to be disregarded. That's not something that anybody ought to do. It's not a child to be written off. That is a child to be loved even further. Because if you take a look at who God created and you scrape away all of the nastiness of the world that's probably been superimposed upon that kid, everything from a lack of attention to a lack of structure to a lack of discipline, all of those things that the world imposes on us, there's something wonderful there to love. And most children, the truth about most children is they're very, very loving creatures, and they want our approval desperately. And I believe that we can approve of the child and approve of that identity and love them unconditionally without requiring them to toe a certain line or work a certain level before we will give them our love. We love them. It's always there. We structure them because that is part of love, and we discipline them because that's the loving, kind thing to do, to teach them what's right, what's wrong, what's in accord with beliefs and values, and what's not, and what's acceptable, what's unacceptable. All of those things are loving things to do with our children, to teach them what it is that they need to know.
I always look at a child's identity. In fact, I look at each individual person's identity as like this unique, beautiful gem that has been forged, created by God, and placed in them at their inception. So your child is given this very unique, this very particular, beautiful diamond or jewel, and that's their identity. All of the different aspects of their identity is reflected in the facets of that jewel, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. It's beautiful to hold. Everything about it is just wonderful and lovely, special and unique. And then they come into the world, and the dirt of the world, for want of a better description, starts getting kind of on the gem. And sometimes that dirt piles up so much that the child loses sight of what that gem is. And maybe you as a parent lose sight of what that gem was when they were first created. But you keep going back and remembering the dirt does not change the jewel. The dirt just lays on top of the jewel, and you brush the dirt off and you remind yourself of the beautiful jewel. And that's a way that helped me to always remember unconditional love means acceptance of their identity, not agreement with their behavior, acceptance with their identity. You embrace the jewel, you identify the stuff that's on top of it as just dirt, and we're going to clean that off. We're going to get that out of the way, and then that jewel is going to shine. And you reinforce with your child how beautiful their identity truly is, even in the midst of correcting their behavior.
And when we focus on that identity, then it's much easier to love because we'll get hurt. They'll say nasty things that'll hurt our feelings. They'll do terrible things that make us feel just awful in watching it. And um, but if I am focused on the person underneath that jewel, then I can always differentiate between what's of the world and what's of God and love what's of God unconditionally.
All right. Hope that that was helpful for you to think and talk about unconditional love in a different context as it relates to your children. We are to reflect the attitude of God, and blessedly, God loves us unconditionally as well. So have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week.